I would like to recognize the Honorable Dionisio Diagla, Minister of Tourism and Aviation, the Honorable Darren Henfield, Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Honorable Jeffrey Lloyd, Minister of Education, the Honorable Marvin Dames, Minister of National Security, the Honorable Kwesi Thompson, Minister of State of Finance and Minister of Grand Bahama, the Honorable Brenzel Roll, Minister of Public Service, other cabinet ministers, Travis Robinson, Parliamentary Secretary, Ministry of Tourism and Aviation, Mr. Reginald Saunders, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Tourism and Aviation, Mr. Len King, Director of the newly established Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority, also referred to as BANZA, Ms. Wendy Craig, Chair of the Board of Directors of the Civil Aviation Authority Bahamas, members of the Board of Directors of the Civil Aviation Authority of the Bahamas, Mr. Michael Allen, Director General of the Civil Aviation Authority Bahamas, Mr. Shane Miller, former Assistant Director of Legal Affairs of the Office of the Attorney General, other senior government officials, Ms. Usher Pitts, Chargé d'Affaires of the U.S. Embassy, Mr. Daniel Villanueva, Political Economic Chief of the U.S. Embassy, Mr. Jake McMillan, U.S. Coast Guard Liaison to the Bahamas, Ms. Lirio Liu, Executive Director, the Federal Aviation Administration, also known as the FAA, and the Office of International Affairs, Mr. David Burkholder, Deputy Executive Director and Lead Negotiator of the FAA Office of International Affairs, Mr. Nicholas Reyes, Director, Western Hemisphere of the FAA Office of International Affairs, Mr. Melvin Cintron, Regional Director of the International Civil Aviation Organization for North America, Central America, and the Caribbean, other members of the FAA, and members of the press. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We're here today on this monumental occasion to complete the signing of a historic agreement between the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority and the Federal Aviation Administration. The purpose of this treaty is to provide for the Bahamas' management of its airspace and the charging of fees to airspace users. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the members of the FAA delegation were unable to physically attend today's event, so we were required to improvise. The signatories of the FAA signed the Air Navigation Services Agreement and the Annex in Washington, D.C. on Friday, and the agreements were then couriered to the Bahamas for signing today by the Honorable Dionisio Diagla in his capacity as the Minister of Tourism and Aviation, and Mr. Len King in his capacity as the Director of the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority. I would now like to turn to Mr. David Burkholder to provide his brief remarks, and he'll be followed by Ms. Lirio Liu and the Chargé d'Affaires Pitts.
Great. Thank you very much, Brian, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Mike Holder, the FAA's Deputy Executive Director for the Office of International Affairs, and as Brian said, I've been the FAA lead on our collaboration for many years now on the negotiation of this historic Air Navigation Services Agreement. I don't intend to take a lot of time today, but I am honored, extremely honored, to be able to participate finally in this ceremony today. Like many, I think I would love to be there in person. And many folks on this call from the FAA side, as well as from the Bahamas team side, we've been working on for many months and many years for some of us. So it's with great pride and with a great sense of accomplishment that we're here today to join in partnership and to celebrate this. I think it's been a long road over the many years that I referenced. We've had several stops and then restarts again. But really in 2017, we had a declaration of intent where we got together and really decided that we're going to, do a strong push to get. That's where the entire Bahamas team and the entire FAA teams have worked very diligently with the common goal of getting this air navigation services agreement in place. I want to thank Minister D'Aguilar for his continued support from the top down, as well as Director General Michael Allen, Civil Aviation Authority of the Bahamas. We've worked together well for many, many years. And with this agreement, I look forward to strengthening our relationship at the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Organization or Authority under Director Len King's leadership. So that is something we look forward to as well. But my last point is probably my most important point, and I can't overlook the dedication and professionalism of Mr. Brian Glinton, my counterpart on the Bahamas team, for his steadfast leadership, dedication, and just all-out commitment to getting this agreement and getting us all here today. So thank you, Brian. Thank you for the whole team. And with that, I cede my remarks. Thank you.
Next, Lyria Liu.
Good afternoon. I'm glad to be here. First off, as the Executive Director for the FAA's Office of International Affairs, I feel honored to be here joining everyone in this long-awaited event. As Dave mentioned, it has been long-awaited and a great successful conclusion. So I know I speak for the entire FAA team in wishing that we were there together in person for this exciting event, but at least technology allows us to be there virtually and join together in this significant accomplishment. The airspace efficiency and harmonization of the air traffic management technology and procedures. Now, we work well together in normal times, as well as in the challenging times, such as the Hurricane Dorian in 2019, and we keep the skies safe and maintain civil and critical aviation infrastructure during these current pandemic times as well. Now, with this agreement, we look forward to strengthening our partnership and to take aviation safety and efficiency to the next level. So on behalf of the administrator, FAA Administrator Steve Dixon, I thank everyone for many years and congratulate the collective group for the significant accomplishment. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before Charge Affairs Pitts come up to the podium, I just want to make a small adjustment in our programming. An urgent matter has arisen for Charge Affairs Pitts. So she, in addition to the remarks that she's going to provide, what we're also going to do is to provide for her signing of the congratulatory note to the Bahamas on this important occasion and the reading of that note. Charge Affairs Pitts.
Well, thank you, everyone. Minister D'Aguilar, Minister Henfield. I have never been in the room with so many high-level Bahamian officials since I got to the Bahamas, so thank you, additional ministers and secretaries, permanent secretaries. And also my colleagues in Washington. So Executive Director Leo, thank you for joining us and thank you for those remarks. Deputy Director Burkholder, I know that it's been a huge amount of coordination, not just to get this event here together today, but also just to get this whole thing put in place so that we can have this signing. It's been years in the making. So it's really a great day for all of us. It's a great day for Bahamian patriots and also for U.S. Bahamian cooperation. So I'm very, very pleased to be here. This agreement, of course, you probably know already, but it will allow the Bahamas to begin receiving flight data from the FAA, and then also so the Bahamas can take a more active part in its airspace management. So it is. This is a big deal, and I remember I haven't been in the Bahamas that long, but when I did get here in one of my first conversations with Minister D'Aguilar, he told me, look, anytime a Bahamian has to walk more than 6 miles or drive more than 6 miles to an airport, the government feels compelled to build one. So as a result, there are many, many airports in the Bahamas. I think over 30, is that correct? Yes, many, many of them. So the airspace is busy, and it's it's not just American tourists who coming to enjoy this very beautiful country, but of course it's also Bahamians going to Walmart, and then all the other more important things that we forget about that is this airspace management allows us to do, which includes economic investment. We have cultural exchanges. We have a lot of educational exchanges. I don't think I meet a Bahamian who hasn't themselves been to college in the United States or sent one of their kids there. So, you know, this, we sometimes take for granted the fact that all this aviation management leads to the fact that we can, that both our countries benefit mightily from our communication, which, by the way, has been going on for over 100 years. It was back in 1914 that the first regularly scheduled passenger flight between the Bahamas and the United States was launched. So it's been a long time, over a century, since we've had this back and forth between our two countries in a scheduled way. And for most of that time, the Federal Aviation Administration has supported the Bahamas in managing that airspace because it is complex. If we don't have these arrangements set up, then we don't have the safety and security that we have to provide our passengers. So this agreement, of course, cements our cooperation for the next 10 years, so following on a history of cooperation in airspace. And it also begins a process whereby the Bahamas can take a greater ownership of their own airspace. And that's why I say it is also a great day for Bahamian patriots. So we are very thrilled with this progress that we are making together and very happy to be part of this cooperation. So thank you, everyone, for being here today. There we go. Okay, thank you. And then I'm also going to read the congratulatory letter here. This is to you, Minister D'Aguilar, to the Bahamians. The United States wishes to extend sincere congratulations on the signing of the Air Navigation Services Agreement between the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority and the United States Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, on April 30th, 2021. These agreements signal a strengthening of our important civil aviation partnership. The United States appreciates the commitment of the Bahamas negotiating team over the last 4 years that has been instrumental in allowing this agreement to occur. We acknowledge the professionalism of Mr. Brian Glinton, the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority under Mr. Len King, and the Civil Aviation Authority of the Bahamas under Mr. Michael F. L. Allen. We look forward to continuing the strong partnership between the United States and the Bahamas to advance aviation safety and efficient air traffic management in the sovereign airspace of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I really am done now. Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Yes.
I would just like to thank the Charge d'Affaires, Pitts, for those remarks, and also for sending the Bahamas a congratulatory note. At this time, she will be leaving the event for an urgent matter she's required to attend to. But before doing so, she's going to sign that letter she just read. Thank you.
Can we take a picture with us receiving the note from the United States?
Yes, and I'm going to get it.
Yeah. Maybe we, where's the best place to do that? Maybe we do it right here. Yes, right here.
Oh.
Put your hand on. You hold the other side. You hold one side. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you again. So at this time, we would like to have Mr. Len King come up. So at this time, I would like to call on Mr. Len King, the Director of the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority, to give his remarks. No, he's not here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Glinton. I stand on the protocol that has been established. It is indeed a distinct privilege for me to bring remarks during this Air Navigation Service Agreement signing ceremony on behalf of the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority and the Civil Aviation Authority of the Bahamas, which is entrusted with the responsibility of charting the way forward for aviation development in the Bahamas. Today, we are not only witnessing history in the making, but more importantly, we are making history in a way that would stand for generations. The Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority, which has the great responsibility for providing air traffic control services, aeronautical information services, flight information and alerting services, aerodrome flight advisory services for the aviation sector. On the other hand, the Civil Aviation Authority of the Bahamas has regulatory oversight. The FIR negotiation initiatives began sometime during 2004, and by March 2017, the Bahamas government and the United States signed two agreements, one for the declaration of intent and the other a radar data partnership. Since that time, ongoing negotiations were pursued, which now culminates, and for the first time, the two countries would be signing a bilateral agreement of cooperation that would make a tangible difference for the Bahamas aviation sector. The signing of the ANS agreement and the attendant 8 Air Traffic Services Annex would benefit our stakeholders, create an economic environment that would embrace opportunities for state-of-the-art technology in aviation and create jobs. Recognizing the Bahamas' aviation requirements, in the near future, we would be rolling out a 5-year business plan which would include a more effective air traffic control management program, an airport collaborative decision-making system, and the implementation of the performance-based navigation system relative to Airspace and instrument approach design using GPS technology, aviation system block upgrades, among other things. Last week, I read in the Business Traveler an article entitled London City Flights Now Controlled by Remote Digital Air Traffic Control Tower. This article brings to light that London City is the first major international airport in the world to be fully controlled by a remote digital air traffic control tower. With this initiative, it would make it possible to introduce such an innovative infrastructure to the Bahamas that would allow the Bahamas air traffic controllers to control the movements of aircraft landing and taking off throughout the Family Islands. The enthusiasm for this partnership for air traffic controllers are enormous, and it reflects the potential that is being realized today by the signing of this agreement. We are fostering the spirit of cooperation, mutual respect, and understanding, which is the catalyst for preserving friendship between the Bahamas and the United States aviation authorities. I would like to express our sincere gratitude to Mr. David Burkholder, lead negotiator, for his efforts and the FAA team in working together with the Bahamas' delegation in making this partnership a reality. I also would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the effort driven by the Honorable Minister Ignacio de Aguilar for his persistence in seeing this project to fruition. And so, Minister, we are beginning to see the fruits of our labor. On behalf of the Bahamas aviation sector, I say to all, thank you.
At this time, I would like to call the Honorable Dionisio de Aguilar to the microphone to give his remarks. Thank you.
Cabinet colleagues, parliamentary colleagues, senior government officials, officials from the U.S. Embassy, officials from the FAA, officials from ICAO, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Simply put, this is a historic day in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Today, we are about to conduct a ceremonial signing of a historic Air Navigation Services Agreement between the newly created Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority and the United States Federal Aviation Administration. Today, we conclude decades upon decades of talks between the Bahamas and the United States about the management of the sovereign airspace of the Bahamas. Today, the Bahamas will assume, for the first time, the management of its sovereign airspace. Commencing the 1st of May 2021, aircraft landing in and departing out of the sovereign airspace of the Bahamas, aircraft flying solely within the sovereign airspace of the Bahamas, and aircraft flying over the sovereign airspace of the Bahamas will start, for the very first time, to pay fees to an entity solely owned and operated by the government of the Bahamas. Ladies and gentlemen, for that reason, this Air Navigation Services Agreement is historic. Never before in the history of an independent Bahamas has anyone paid anything to the government of the Bahamas for the use of its airspace. Today, that changes. I am advised that back in 1952, almost 70 years ago, our colonial masters, Great Britain, the United States, and Cuba, gathered in Havana, where it was decided that the provision of air navigation services over what is now the sovereign airspace of the Bahamas would be divided between the FAA from the United States and its equivalent, ECNA, from Cuba. As the diagram shows, the FAA was assigned the greatest portion of the Bahamas sovereign airspace in which to provide air navigation services, approximately 75%. And the Cubans were assigned the remaining 25%. The Bahamas was assigned nothing, other than a small area around Nassau up to 6,000 feet. Aircraft using the sovereign airspace of the Bahamas paid fees directly to the FAA and the Cubans. And once again, the Bahamas received not one red cent from this arrangement. In the minds of most right-thinking Bahamians, this arrangement was unacceptable. And since assuming office in May 2017, this minister-led administration, this Minister of Aviation, made it an absolute priority to conclude an agreement like the one today to correct the construct that left the Bahamas totally out of the loop as it relates to the management and fee collection for the use of our sovereign airspace. How, after almost 50 years since independence, were we able to reach this historic milestone today? Well, it wasn't easy. And I must say, everyone was extremely skeptical that after many stops and starts, we would ever reach this point today. The journey started with a change in direction. The focus had always been on the establishment of a flight information region, or an FIR. A flight information region is an area on the planet where air navigation services are provided. Within the sovereign airspace of the Bahamas, the Americans operated their FIR, and the Cubans operated their FIR. And quite naturally, we had a national aspiration to build the necessary infrastructure and hire and train sufficient Bahamian air traffic controllers to replace the Americans and the Cubans and operate our own FIR encompassing the entire sovereign airspace of the Bahamas. And to their credit, our FAA brothers and sisters were fully supportive of this national aspiration to operate our own FIR. But there was one simple problem. Before we could operate our FIR, we needed to demonstrate to the world, we needed to demonstrate to the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, who are directly responsible for such decisions, that we had the ability and the capacity to manage an FIR. And to demonstrate that capacity, we needed substantial resources to build the necessary air traffic control infrastructure, and we needed substantial resources to hire and train the necessary air traffic controllers. So here we were, going around in circles, year after year, decade after decade, demanding the right to operate our own FIR over the sovereign airspace of the Bahamas, but not able to allocate the necessary resources to build the capacity to do so. As a result, despite what anyone might say, there was very little movement on this issue, and year after year passed and decade after decade passed, where we simply failed to realize any revenue from our sovereign airspace with which to build the necessary capacity to operate a FIR. So, commencing in 2018, we changed direction. Myself and my negotiating team met with the International Civil Aviation Organization in Montreal, and they advised us to take a different approach. Our first action was to assert our sovereignty over the sovereign airspace of the Bahamas. We asserted that airspace users and air navigation service providers could not and should not operate in the sovereign airspace of the Bahamas without interacting in some way with the government of the Bahamas. After all, Article 1 of the United Nations Convention on International Civil Aviation states, quote, that every state has the complete and exclusive sovereignty over the airspace above its territory. In asserting our sovereignty, we deemed that all airspace users, mostly commercial aircraft like Bahamas Air, American Delta, United JetBlue, British Airways, etc., all airspace users would now begin to pay a fee to the government of the Bahamas to use our sovereign airspace. Given that the government of the Bahamas is not currently in a position to provide the necessary air navigation services to the airspace users, the government of the Bahamas, through its wholly owned Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority, would enter, therefore, into agreements, such as the one we are signing today, where it would delegate the provision of the necessary air navigation services in Bahamian sovereign airspace to the FAA and to the Cubans in ECNA. The airspace users would pay the Bahamian government, and the Bahamian government would in turn contract with the FAA and the Cubans to provide the air navigation services. Gone would be the days where this activity would be conducted in the absence of the Bahamian government. Our next step was to determine the fees that would be charged and paid by the airspace users. To assist in this exercise, the government hired an aviation consulting firm, ALG, to help it determine what fees the airspace users should pay. Naturally, the government had no experience in determining its fee structure, since it had never charged any fees, and ALG Consulting proved exceptionally helpful in this exercise. Prior to the 1st of May 2021, the provision of air traffic control services by Bahamian air traffic controllers to land and take off from Bahamian airports and fly within the Bahamas airspace below 6,000 feet was free of charge, the entire cost being picked up by the government. Based upon the fact that the provision of such air traffic control services attracts a fee in almost all jurisdictions of the world, on the 1st of May 2021, all airspace users that land and take off from Bahamian airports and fly within Bahamian airspace will now pay a fee of $1 per arriving and departing passenger, plus a flat fee of $10 up to $61 for each flight, depending on the maximum takeoff weight of the aircraft. The aircraft that weighs less will pay less. The aircraft that pays more will pay more. Also, prior to the 1st of May 2021, all aircraft flying over the Bahamas, not landing or taking off in the Bahamas, but simply flying through our sovereign airspace, paid the FAA directly $61.75 per 100 nautical miles. After the 1st of May 2021, the airspace users will pay the government of the Bahamas from $8.50 to $51.60 per 100 nautical miles based on the maximum takeoff weight of the aircraft. Once again, the aircraft that weighs less and travels a shorter distance will pay less, and the aircraft that weighs more and travels a longer distance will pay more. Once the fee structure was determined, the government conducted an ICAO-mandated 6-month consultation process with airspace users, which started last year on the 31st of August 2020 with the publication of the Notice of Intent. The consultation phase started with the publication of dissemination material explaining the government's new initiative on the charging of fees to use its sovereign airspace. The government then held 2 open consultation meetings with airspace users, ensuring that in each instance, it responded to comments received during and after the meetings. Finally, when all the consultation was completed, all of the legitimate concerns addressed, all of the acceptable adjustments made, the government published on the 1st of May 2021 the official fee structure that would be applied to airspace users using the sovereign airspace of the Bahamas, which is displayed here today and which I described earlier, that board down there. It is important to note that all airspace user fees collected by the government can only be used to fund the costs of managing and operating the civil aviation system in the Bahamas, a cost that prior to today was funded solely by the taxpayers of the Bahamas. Funds collected from airspace users cannot be deposited into the consolidated fund and used for purposes other than providing a safe and well-managed aviation sector. Finally, all fees must, according to the UN's Convention on Civil Aviation, Article 15, be non-discriminatory, i.e., all carriers will pay the same fee irrespective of their nationality. We could not, for example, charge one fee for Bahamian carriers and another fee for non-Bahamian carriers. I'm sure that there will be the naysayers who will say that we could have charged more. I am confident that our process was methodical, well-researched, and stood up to the significant scrutiny to which it was subjected by all of the airspace users. I wish to categorically state, however, that the government of Bahamas is open and receptive to proposals from Bahamian companies that will add value to the airspace users and for which they will willingly wish to pay more to receive. The final step in this lengthy journey in getting us to the point where we are today was for the Bahamas government to conclude agreements with the FAA and the Cubans. As mentioned, we do not have the infrastructure nor the capacity today to provide air traffic control services above 6,000 feet in our sovereign airspace. So the agreement that we are signing today is for the FAA to provide that service on our behalf for the next 10 years, allowing us sufficient time to prepare ourselves to achieve our national aspiration of managing our own FIR. Funds collected from the users of our sovereign airspace will be used to cover the current operating costs of civil aviation in the Bahamas, but must also be used to build capacity. It would be a travesty if all of the funds were simply used to pay even greater salaries. The funds should and must be used to build capacity, to expand the capabilities of the Bahamas, to provide air traffic control services from Grand Bahama in the north to Anagua in the south, and from the ground up to the sky. I would be remiss if I did not thank a few individuals in getting us to this historic moment in Bahamian aviation history. First, I would like to thank my good friend, lawyer Brian Glinton, and his negotiating team for getting us a deal with the FAA. Brian Glinton, who is the managing partner in a local law firm, Glinton Sweeting O'Brien, took time away from his law practice, sorry clients, and his family to spend countless hours from 2017 to today to get us to this signing. This was truly a labor of love of country for him, since as a director of the Civil Aviation Bahamas, his compensation was only the nominal fee paid to directors each year. He kept the process moving, a calming but relentless force that has won numerous accolades from his counterparts at the FAA. I don't even know if his counterparts at the FAA truly understand that Brian really has a very serious day job and was able to get us here today through his wonderfully pleasant personality, his perseverance, his tenacity, his experiences as an attorney trained in the United States, and his ability to operate clearly and coherently on very little sleep. Brian, on behalf of a grateful nation, thank you. Obviously, Brian was assisted by numerous other Bahamas government employees, both current and former, who also helped overcome the hurdles that had blocked us in the past. Those employees include the current Director of Civil Aviation, Michael Allen, the former Director of Civil Aviation, Charles Beneby, the current Director of Banza, Len King, the Deputy Director of Legal Affairs in the Office of the Attorney General, Shane Miller, and the current Head of Legal Affairs at Civil Aviation, Mr. Alex Ferguson. I would also like to thank David Burkholder, the full-time employee on the FAA side, who kept his team, who kept his superiors focused on getting us to this historic moment today. He was responsive, he was accessible, all hours of the day and night, even on vacation. And the Bahamas is truly thankful for his help and support. For almost 70 years, the FAA has provided air navigation services in the sovereign airspace of the Bahamas without any formal agreement with the government of the Bahamas. That, as indicated, changes today. And this air navigation services agreement between the Bahamas Air Navigation Service Authority and the FAA is for 10 years, with an automatic 36-month extension if the Bahamas indicates at the end of the 10 years that it wishes to renew. Per this agreement, and I quote, the FAA will not charge the BANZA, the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority, for the continued provision of air traffic services within the portion of Bahamian airspace for which the FAA currently provides air traffic service. Let me repeat that. The FAA will not charge the BANZA for the continued provision of air traffic services within the portion of Bahamian airspace for which the FAA currently provides air traffic services. Upon entry into force of this agreement, 1st of May 2021, the FAA will end its collection of overflight fees for this airspace. Ladies and gentlemen, the FAA will continue to provide air navigation services in the sovereign airspace of the Bahamas free of charge. Do you see why this agreement is so historic? BANZA will pay the FAA a small annual fee so that it can generate the data, the details of what airspace users flew through the sovereign airspace in a particular month. We will in turn use that data to assist in our billing and collection of the fees. I conclude my remarks today by stating publicly how delighted I am with the support that the government of the Bahamas has received from the FAA. It has truly been a pleasure to interact with you all during the process. The level of engagement and support has truly been astounding. Ultimately, it cements the wonderful relationship the Bahamas has with the United States. And it also cements the wonderful relationship that the Civil Aviation Authority of the Bahamas and now the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority will have with their counterparts at the FAA. Ladies and gentlemen, let us now move to the signing of this Air Navigation Services Agreement. And on this day, at this time, make history in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you and good afternoon. Thank you.
It's now official. The agreement has been officially signed between the Bahamas and the United States. This is truly an historic occasion and a monumental accomplishment by both parties, and it certainly will change the direction of aviation in the Bahamas. At this point in time, I would like to open the floor to the press to raise or ask questions. I'm calling on Ariel Bowleg of the Tribune.
It's Ariel Bowleg.
Thank
Good
you.
afternoon. No problem. I noticed that this is a question for the minister. You talked about all the fees and what would be charged. What is the legal ramifications for airlines and pilots that don't adhere to setting up or paying these fees? Will they automatically be charged on arrival to the Bahamas? What's the plan for that, and what's the setup for airlines to pay these fees prior or on arrival?
So typically what happens is that when you purchase your ticket, all of these fees are embedded in your ticket. And there's an organization called IATA, the International Air Transport Association, which is like the Chamber of Commerce for all airlines. And all of the fees go to IATA, and IATA then takes that money that you would have paid for your ticket and breaks it out between, some goes to the airport, some goes in government taxes, some will go in these fees. And that is how monies are settled in the aviation sector. So once these fees will be built into your tickets, and when you purchase a ticket, you will pay for those fees.
Next, I have Notario Mackenzie of Eyewitness Digital.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I just wanted firstly to get an understanding of I guess, maybe a bit more explanation on the rationale between establishing a separate entity apart from the Civil Aviation Authority to...
Yeah, you're breaking up on us, and we'll come back to that question, but we were losing you just now. I'd like to, at this point in time, move on to Tyler Simonet of JCN.
Good afternoon, everyone. My first question is, it was mentioned that after 10 years, if the Bahamas wishes to renew, there would be an additional 36 months, I believe. Would you be able to explain why it wouldn't be renewed for another 10 years? Like, what is the rationale behind the 36 months?
Yeah. Just for clarification on that, so what happens is the term is for 10 years, and at the end of the 10 years, if the Bahamas wanted to actually, say, proceed on its own, then it would give the U.S. FAA a 36-month notice of termination. And so the agreement would run for an additional 36 months, because as you can imagine, something as complex as managing providing air navigation services, there has to be a transition. So they would be allowed some kind of a transition should that occur. But certainly the Bahamas could renew it for another 10 years at the end of the 10-year period. Next, I would like to field a question from a Makushla Pinder of ZNS.
Good afternoon, all. Obviously, this is good news for the economy, especially at this time. What do you peg as the annual injection into the economy due to the fees that we'd now be able to collect?
Minister?
So we've obviously had our consultants looking at the traffic flow, and based on the fee structure that we would have designed and would have put in place, we reckon in the first year it should be between $20 to $30 million. And then obviously right now we're in a depressed aviation sector. COVID-19 has significantly impacted the aviation sector. And we envision over time this growing to $30 to $40 million. So I like to say over the next 10 years, we're signing today a $300 to $350 million deal today.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to go to Berthany McDermott from Our News Digital.
Good afternoon. Minister, it was mentioned that an annual fee will be paid to the FAA. Can you tell us or give us a little more detail into that fee? Will that be a scaled structure like mentioned, or is it a set fee, or can you tell us what that fee is or will be?
Yes, I can actually take that question. The fee is approximately $80,000, and what it is, it's per annum, and it's an annual fee that would be paid to the FAA for the provision of data. In order for us to bill airlines and airspace users for the use of our airspace, we need data, and that data is currently collected by the FAA of every airspace user going or traversing the Bahamian airspace, and they will provide that in a format that we would then be able to provide to this organization you heard the minister mention earlier, being IATA. And then IATA would be able to generate bills to the airlines and arrange for their collection. So that's the purpose of that nominal fee of $80,000. At this point in time, I wanted to go back to Natario McKenzie at Eyewitness Digital.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Excellent. Yes, my question initially was, I just wanted to get I guess a bit of an understanding in terms of the reason for creating BANSA and how it operates, I guess, in relation to the Civil Aviation Authority, why it was necessary to set up a separate entity.
Minister?
So the Civil Aviation Authority of the Bahamas is the regulator. And then you had the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Department embedded in the Civil Aviation, which was a service provider. So you had a regulator and a service provider in the same organization. And that was considered a conflict. So we had to break the service provider, the air traffic control, the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Department, into its own authority. And the Civil Aviation Authority will now regulate the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority. So the Civil Aviation Authority is the regulator. They regulate the Airports Authority. They regulate BANSA. They regulate the Air Accident Investigation Department. They regulate every operator in the aviation sector. And so it just was not good form to have a service provider embedded in the bowels of the regulator. So we decided to break them out.
Thank you, Minister. I'm going back to Ariel Bolag. I believe you may have had an additional question.
No question at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions from Tyler Simonet of JCN?
No, thank you. No additional questions.
I'm moving on to Makushla Pinder at ZNS.
Yes, are there any penalties for late payments? And what does this look like? How does this work?
So we don't envision late payments. You know, when you buy the ticket, the money goes to IATA, and IATA then sends it to us. So, once we tell IATA that JetBlue flew from Fort Lauderdale to Nassau, and based on the weight of the aircraft, it incurred this fee, and based on the number of passengers, it incurred this fee, they bill JetBlue. And they collect JetBlue, the money from JetBlue, and at the end of the month, or whenever we send the bills and they respond, the money will come from JetBlue. So we don't envision. Now, there is general aviation. So, you may have a private plane and you may jump up and fly within the airspace. So that's a bit more complex, requires a little bit more management in order to collect those fees. But certainly the vast majority of users in the airspace will be the commercial aviation sector, for which there's a long-established, very robust collection system. As you can imagine, every provider in this sector, the airports, the Bahamas government taxes, now the aviation charges, all of that is incorporated into the ticket and comes into IATA, and they split it out and send it to everybody. So there's like a 99% collection rate.
Thank you. I'm going to Berthany McDermott to see if there are any additional questions.
Good afternoon. Yes, thank you. Minister, you mentioned that the fees will be built into tickets. Can you tell us what that will look like? How much more will be on a person's ticket when they are looking to travel? And also, if I can just also ask, how have conversations gone with airlines about this agreement?
I mean, obviously it depends. The fee that we're collecting is based on the maximum takeoff weight of the plane and the number of passengers. So the airline will build that into a ticket. Pennies, 30, 40, 50 cents, maybe $1. Obviously, the larger the plane. I don't know specifically, because obviously each aircraft will attract a different fee. There is the $1 charge, so it'll be $1 and something for arriving and departing passengers. But what we tried to do is, in basing the fee on the maximum takeoff weight of the aircraft, well, obviously in our jurisdiction, most of the aircraft are not very heavy, so they will attract the lower fees. And obviously the ones that fly over are a lot more heavy, and they will attract the greater fees. So we have tried to develop our strategy to and our fee regime to be as helpful as possible to persons coming to the Bahamas, but to be non-discriminatory. You couldn't develop a fee structure that favored Bahamians over non-Bahamians. It had to be one rate applied to all. And so we therefore moved to the maximum takeoff weight of the plane to try and assist our nascent aviation sector as best as possible.
I'm not sure if there are any other questions out there at this time. Or there are two additional questions? Okay. Yes, Nataria McKenzie, I understand you have another question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I know it was mentioned earlier regarding, I heard a business plan was referenced. Just wanted to get an understanding of, I guess maybe what that would entail, what forward-looking sort of thoughts would be involved in that.
Yeah, so what has happened here at Banza, and again, as I had mentioned earlier when I did the introductions, Banza is a newly established body that just came about in February of this year. They are mandated to put together a 5-year business plan, just looking out to see how they start this capacity building. I think the minister made a very good point. We had initially started down this path of saying that we wanted to manage and control our own FIR, although at the time we simply didn't have the capacity, and even today we don't have the capacity to do that. So it is going to be a capacity building exercise, and there's going to be an examination of the kinds of technology and equipment and hardware we need to bring in, as well as the expertise and expanding the capacity of air traffic controllers and so forth. So it's really along that line that they're going to start out in this direction. But again, as I mentioned, Banzo was only formed in February of this year, so that is something that they certainly have at the top of their list. No. Okay, so there being no further questions, at this point in time, I would like to just move to the next item in our agenda, and that is to provide the closing remarks. Again, as I had indicated earlier, this is certainly a very historic occasion and event, and while I certainly appreciate the kind words of the Minister, we could not have gotten here without the help of quite a number of persons. First of all, I would like to thank the Minister. He has been relentless and relentlessly persistent in finding a way that would provide for the Bahamas to proceed with the establishment of its Bahamian airspace and providing for its safe management by the current service providers. This started in 2018 on a fateful trip that the Minister took a small delegation to Mexico City to meet with the regional head of the International Civil Aviation Organization. At the time, Wendy Craig, the current chair of the board of CAB, as well as the former Director General Charles Benaby, and myself, we were on this trip to Mexico to figure out what steps we would need to take. We left Mexico realizing that there was quite a challenge and that we would have to overcome in order to do this. But again, the Minister insisted. Within 3 weeks of landing back in the Bahamas from Mexico City, he was on the phone with ICAO's headquarters in Montreal. And after a couple of hours of just going around in circles on this call, the Minister persisted in relying on the UN Charter that every sovereign country have a right over their sovereign airspace. And really it was during those discussions that we realized that the path we were on would not have been the path that we needed to take to get to where we are. And that led to the Minister charging in a different direction, and that is for us to actually go ahead and first establish our Bahamian airspace, build the capacity before we then proceed. And that certainly required the assistance of the FAA as well as ECNA, which is the Cuban counterpart, to provide for something like that. And that now turns me to our partners, the FAA. I have had a great relationship with the FAA. They have worked diligently in trying to make this happen. As a result of the 3.5-year relationship we had with the FAA, when we had Hurricane Dorian, the Minister had appointed me to be responsible for getting aircraft on the ground in both Grand Bahama and Abaco. And it was really our friends at the FAA who helped us with this, because we found that it was quite a bit of a challenge to get that done, but yet we were able to get plane and aid on the ground within 24 hours of the storm passing. And the FAA was certainly a big part of that, and they went so far as to even make a mobile air traffic control tower available to us. And that was really based upon the relationship that we had built during this whole process of negotiating the current agreement that we have signed here today. I would like to particularly thank David Burkholder. He has been an amazing counterpart. He is my counterpart at the FAA as the lead negotiator for that organization. As the Minister indicated earlier, I would call David on weekends, during his family holidays, late at night, and he was always accommodating and certainly making every effort to move the project along at the FAA level. So I think that was certainly a great opportunity, and David and I have become friends, and I actually look forward to inviting and hosting David and his family here in our lovely country, the Bahamas. I would also like to thank Joshua Sayers, who is the Senior Advisor in the Office of the Prime Minister. I'm certainly not, I certainly have very limited diplomacy experience coming in as a lawyer, but given Josh's vast experience in this area, he certainly provided great guidance. I would like to thank Wendy Craig, the chair of CAB. Wendy asked, when am I going to show up to the next board meeting? I mean, certainly she has been very patient with me and working with me along the way as we try to make this happen. And I've promised her that now that we have done this, I'm back on track. But certainly she has given me a lot of leeway to really work on this project and to get it along. I'd like to thank Shane Miller, who was mentioned earlier. he has been of tremendous assistance in helping us to settle these agreements with the U.S. government, and also in working diligently with us in settling the agreements with the Cuban government as well. Shane was always available, and he was always quick to our responses, and certainly of tremendous assistance. I'd like to thank Director General Michael Allen of DeKalb. I mean, I know he's new to this position, but he jumped right in, and he gave his time and always available for me to reach. He made all of the resources at CAB available to me to keep this project going. I would like to thank Alex Ferguson, who is the legal counsel of CAB. I'd like to thank him for his sage advice and always being available to me. And I'd also like to thank our partners at ALG. ALG is a consulting firm that we have hired to take us through this process. This is a very unique process, and there are certain requirements that we're required to adhere to in order to make this happen, and I believe that they have done an excellent job in guiding us in that direction. At this time, I would like to note that this concludes the end of our signing ceremony, and I would like to thank you again for coming, and I would also like to thank the press for the questions you raised. I think we all will find, or our audience will find, that the responses that we've given will certainly be informative for them. Again, thank you.